So welcome to the Journal of Expressive Writing monthly feature and open mic. It is March 6th, 2025, and we're so excited for our feature tonight to talk about writing the personal essay, Nancy Slonim Aronie. And in the meantime, just before I introduce Nancy, I want to mention that our open mic is going to follow, and our readers are going to read 3 minutes or less of their writing in any genre. And I just want to remind our readers that we definitely want to hear you. If you go over 3 minutes, then I may have to cut you off. Don't take it personally. You're always welcome back. It's helpful if you time your writing in advance, because we really do try to stick to our schedule and close at 8:30 on the dot if we can. So thanks for coming tonight. We're excited to hear everyone's writing. I want to introduce Jen Minotti, of course, who's responsible for us being here. And, she drew it to my attention today, in fact, that the Journal of Expressive Writing is having an anniversary in May. Jen is the founder and the editor of the Journal of Expressive Writing. Jen, why don't you unmute, and don't announce our feature for that night yet, because I haven't asked her. I know she'll do it, but it's not official yet.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks everyone for being here. And yes, we have a 5-year anniversary coming up for the Journal of Expressive Writing in May. And it's wonderful to say that with having Nancy Aronie here as our feature, because I can honestly say that this space, the journal, the open, none of this would exist if it were not for Nancy. And she may not even realize that, but over 12 years ago, I had just moved back to Cambridge. I saw a little flyer when we still saw flyers on bulletin boards, in the street. I saw a little flyer, and it was kind of raining out, kind of like tonight. I'm looking out my window, and I thought, oh, do I want to go this? Yes, I want to go this, but it's raining. And I said, I'm going to go. And I went to this little art gallery where Nancy was reading on my street. It was very serendipitous. And at the end, I went up to talk to Nancy, and she said, you have to come to my workshop on the Cape. It was like in a few weeks. And I was like, I can't do that. And something told me I have to do that. And Nancy, I've told you this before, and I'll say it again. You changed my life, and you gave me my voice back. And I'll never, ever, ever forget it, because I not only got my voice back, I was then able to translate that into some small semblance of what you do, and in being able to provide that for other people. And this is such an honor and thrill to have you. It's kind of come full circle. I can't believe it. And
You're making me cry.
Me too. So this is just so exciting, and it's so exciting to celebrate your new book, and have it be, kind of almost coordinated with the 5-year anniversary of the Journal of Expressive Writing. So I'm turning it over back to you, and just want to say thank you.
Oh my God.
More than you so much. I remember that night completely. There were like 4 people, right?
Yes.
See, but Nancy, and those of us who are writers and authors and people who've gone out, to try to sell our books or whatever we're doing, sometimes you're just there for that one person.
Exactly.
Right?
I have to tell a story that goes with that. I was teaching at Wainwright House about 30 years ago in Rye, New York, and I was with a friend, and I had found out that 6 people had signed up. And I said to him, I'm going to tell them that I posted the wrong date. And he said, what? And I said, I'm too embarrassed that not a lot of people signed up. And he said, so you're going to lie? And I said, yep. And I started crying. And he said, what is that about? And I said, I remember that my father was so excited that I was popular. It was like the main thing to him is that I had 1 million friends. And this tells me I'm not popular. And he said, oh my God. He said, I cannot believe what you are telling me right now. And I really had to go inside and heal the little child that was popular. And when I got to the class the next morning, I told them the story and I said I was going to lie to you. And there were only 6, well, I think 2 more people came, but the same thing happened. Those people have come back, and it was supposed to be a small group. That was it. It was intimate, it was powerful, it was gorgeous. And it was, I had to, you have to take your ego and give it a tranquilizer. So, so my ego had to take a little nap, night, night.
Really, really beautiful and a really important story that I'm sure a lot of us who we can all, I know I can really, really relate. So wonderful. Thank you. That is one of the principles you're going to be talking about in your 7 top ideas about writing the personal essay. One is that vulnerability, which clearly you've nailed and you've got down. So I'm going to introduce you formally in 1 minute. But thanks for giving us that backstory, Jen, because I actually had not heard it before. And it's such a fabulous story about this community and how it has been birthed. This was the pandemic that Jen said, this is 2020 when Jen said, I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to launch this literary endeavor of the Journal of Expressive Writing. And she just did it. All right. So there's another beautiful example of how we can really make change in this complicated, difficult world. I want to welcome Lynn from Tasmania, Australia.
Wow.
Everybody is so welcome here tonight. Well, those of you who come regularly know that I really enjoy sharing a poem to sort of bring us together. And I thought I may have read this here before. I'd be surprised if I hadn't, but you can't hear this poem too often, probably, by Ada Lignon on instructions on not giving up. More than the fuchsia funnels breaking out of the crabapple tree, more than the neighbor's almost obscene display of cherry limbs shoving their cotton candy-colored blossoms to the slate sky of spring rains. It's the greening of the trees that really gets to me. When all the shock of white and taffy, the world's baubles and trinkets leave the pavement strewn with confetti of aftermath, the leaves come, patient, plodding, a green skin growing over whatever winter did to us, a return to the strange idea of continuous living despite the mess of us, the hurt, the empty. Fine then, I'll take it, the trees seem to say, a new slick leaf unfurling like a fist to an open palm. I'll take it all. Ada Limon.
Beautiful.
Instructions on not giving up. All righty, so now I am going to be introducing our feature tonight, Nancy Slonim Aronie. She's been a commentator for National Public Radio's All Things Considered, a visiting writer at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and a monthly columnist for McCall's Magazine, multiple newspapers. She was the recipient of the Eye of the Beholder Artist in Residence Award at Boston's Own Award at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, and won the Teacher of the Year Award for all 3 years she taught at Harvard University for Robert Coles. The author of Memoir as Medicine, The Healing Power of Writing Your Messy, Imperfect, Unruly, but Gorgeously Yours life story, and Writing from the Heart, Tapping the Power of Your Inner Voice. Nancy's founder of the Chillmark Writing Workshop on Martha's Vineyard, where she lives. In addition to teaching workshops on the vineyard, she teaches writing workshops and lectures at Kripalu, Center for Yoga and Health, Omega Institute, Rowe Conference Center, Esalen, Wainwright House, and the Open Center in New York City. Now, Nancy's going to be reading to us and talking tonight to us about the 7 secrets to the perfect personal essay, crafting the story only you can write. It is described by her publisher as the invaluable advice for writing a knockout essay, for college admissions or self-expression, that moves readers and reveals insights into the human condition. Everyone has a story, and helping people tell their stories has been Nancy's life mission. Building on her acclaimed Memoir as Medicine, this new guide tackles the short personal essay, With warmth and humor, Nancy provides prompts, inspiration, and hard-won wisdom to empower you to write an unforgettable narrative. You'll learn to begin with an irresistible hook, kill him with the first line, and employ compelling direct quotes, drama, vulnerability, universal themes, and self-reflection to get readers into your corner. We all need to do that. So, a review by Abby Remmer writes that you can hear Nancy cheer you on to be the best writer possible in her compelling new book. Both in person and on the page, Aronie bubbles with sincere enthusiasm, wit, and warmth, all of which comes across as she shares her 7 secrets, which she's come to over her lifetime of writing, more than 40 years of teaching. She also says one of Nancy's core beliefs is how writing about our mini or large traumas is a way to heal both emotionally and physically. Yes, sorrow and keeping your story inside affect your health. Telling or writing your story and having it be listened to and acknowledged, received, is healing. And that is what Jen does with the Journal of Expressive Writing. That's what Nancy is here to talk to us about doing tonight. We welcome you. Thank you for coming, Nancy Aronie.
Oh, thank you. What a gorgeous introduction. You're so good at this. I want to say that I had proposed to my editor, my publisher, a collection of essays. Essays don't sell. He said, no, 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 essays don't sell. So I just did not know how to get the brilliance of all of the people that have taken the workshops. Every week, there are these phenomenal writers. I'm a good writer, brilliant, better writers than I could ever be, one after another, who aren't published, who aren't famous. And I had always had a fantasy that I could get them into a book, and he really put it down. But his whole thing is how to. So I hung up the phone and I went, okay, I got to redo this. And I called him back and I said, actually, it wouldn't be a collection of essays. It would be how to write a personal essay. And he said, oh, I'm interested in that. Okay, let's do it. Gave me a very tiny advance. And I started writing and I wrote for about 3 weeks. And I called him. I said, okay, the book is done. It's 13 pages. He said, what? And I said, well, I have to have examples. And he said, oh, you're sneaking them in, huh? So the book has 43 essays and they're not edited. They're from the class. They're either were written in class or they were written that night as my prompt. I hate to say homework because that's obnoxious. So they're the prompts. And what I say when there's a prompt at night, don't pull your hair out. Don't rip up the pages. Don't try to have perfection. You'll squeeze the juice right out of it. Just write, read it over, make a couple of changes and bring it in. So the pieces that are in this book they're raw and they're gorgeous. And I did get to publish a lot of people, and I'm just very pleased about that.
Well, thank you, Nancy. Raw and gorgeous is a beautiful way of, I think, talking about what you're talking about, this expressive writing, the importance and the necessity of writing one's truth and inherently that being a healing process. This is your time now. We'd love to hear you talk or read whatever, but just give us your juice because we want
all
it.
right. The reason I know how to do this workshop is many, 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 many years ago, before most of you were born, I was invited to be part of a writing group that had been established for years. They were all fancy schmancy writers. Most of them were published in my town in Hartford, Connecticut. Do we have anybody from Hartford? I don't think so, which is good because I'm telling on these people. And they asked me to be in the group, and I was thrilled because they were all, established writers, and I was considering myself kind of a newbie. And I said yes, and I got there. It was a Wednesday night, and there were 14 women. And the first woman who read, the piece was stunning. And the first person who responded sounded like this. Harriet, I felt that your characters were really rather one-dimensional. I mean, I couldn't relate to them. And I had never been in a writing group before, and I thought, oh my God, this is what happens here? And then one by one, almost everyone in that room had something negative to say about this stunning piece. And I just sat there with a stomach ache because it was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then there was, after all the negative comments, there was peach cobbler, unbelievable peach cobbler. And I glommed and I put a phony face on and I socialized and smiled, a very phony smile. And I got in the car and I got home and my husband greeted me and said, so, how was it? And I said, oh my God, the peach cobbler was fabulous. He said, no, babe, the writing thing. And I said, mean spirited, actually. And he said, you going back? I said, yeah, these are my mentors. Of course I'm going back. So the next Wednesday I went back, another gorgeous house, intimidating, and the same 14 women, and another person read a piece that was just knock your socks off. And the same thing happened. The first person who responded said, you know, Gwendolyn, I really have to admire your perseverance. I mean, you just don't quit, do you, dear? What? I mean, I know she said that because when I got out to the car, I wrote down, you just don't quit, do you, dear? I could not believe that you would say that to anybody. And then they all had some, not all of them, but nobody said anything good. But most of them said negative things. And I was thinking, well, I'm in the wrong. I can't do this. And then there was this blueberry thing. They had a dessert, this wonderful dessert table. You know, we have a person from Maine, those wild Maine blueberries, they're so sweet, unbelievable. And I, again, glommed and again, put on a phony smile and socialized and got out of there as fast as I could get out of there. And I got home with blue teeth. Again, my husband greets me and says, so? And I said, oh my word, these people should have nothing to do with writing people. First of all, they're mean. Second of all, they're wrong. Third of all, they should write maybe a dessert book or something because they're really good at desserts. And he said, are you going back? And I said, yeah, I'm reading next time. And he said, you're not nervous? I said, no, they're not going to do it to the new person. Uh-huh. I wish you had called me and said, don't go. So anyway, I didn't read an iffy thing. I didn't read something I was working on. I read the best thing that I thought I had ever written. I didn't think I had written it. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever written. See, I fixed my dangling participle. I read, and they did a job on me. And I actually took notes. I actually took the pen. Here's what I did. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, thank you. Right. I hadn't realized that. Sure. Thanking them for sticking a stake in my heart and turning it. So I thanked them, and then there was apple crisp. By now you know that my priorities are a little strange. So, but I knew I had to get out of there because I was about to cry. So I don't like eating off paper, but I had to get out. So I took the paper plate. Now, you know how when you're in the middle of a trauma, everything is slow motion and you remember everything. I could tell you what that paper plate looks like to this day. I won't, but I could. And I put apple crisp in the bowl and I got in the car and I took a bite and I could not swallow. And I drove home and I didn't write for 2 years. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because some of us, most of us, often give our power to the wrong person. I knew I was a good writer. I didn't need them to tell me I was great. And yet they got me in my core. They broke my heart. And I really, I mean, maybe it wasn't 2 years, but it was a really long time before I could write again. So at one point, I decided that I would start a writing workshop myself. And I put a little ad in the West Hartford News, and 10 people came to my house, and I kind of knew all of them. And guess what happened? The same thing. People tore each other apart. They had negative stuff to say to each other. week after week after week, beautiful writing, and nobody saying anything positive except me writing notes and saying positive things. And what I noticed was shoulders went up, faces got constricted, and the writing got generic. Very safe and very uninteresting, no risk taking. And I was pretty miserable. And I remember being in Waldbaum's in the grocery store, and I was just about to pick up a broccoli. And one of the women from the workshop approached me and she said, "Can you believe that Patrice is writing a romance novel, all 275 pounds of her?" I put the broccoli down, I went into my car, and I burst into tears, and I thought, what have I done? I can't believe I don't know how to do this. I have done a terrible thing. I'm never doing this again, and I'm going to go to the class and I'm going to apologize. And I was so miserable. And the thing ended, and I walked around very unhappy that I had not been supportive and I had not done a beautiful job. And you know how you have like a wise person in your stomach? Well, my wise person said, "You're going to do this again, and you're going to do it better, and you're going to be wise this time." So I put another ad in. And when the people called me on the phone, I actually said, "Do you know me?" And if they said no, I said, "Come on down." And I took 12 people that I had never met. And when they gathered, I said, "You know what? I've only done this once and I failed miserably, but I learned something. Creativity requires safety. You will be safe here. I have one rule, and that is when you finish reading, we will tell you what we loved." And that's what the workshop is about. And it works to this day. And it's not phony schmony. It's not like, "Oh, I want to be her best friend. I'm going to say," no, if you have something that blew you away, you make that comment. If there's a line that was gorgeous to you, you tell the person. There is no, "Oh, I heard something just like that." No, none of that. None of that takes place. So I've been doing it for a long time. And what I see over and over and over again is people take huge chances. People go way deep. They take the chance of saying, "This is who I am. This is what happened to me." And that's the beauty of the workshop, is being in a safe place that you can not think, "What will they think of me? I better not write that. They're going to think I'm weird." Rather, we fall in love with each other. And what I watch week after week after week is people bonding. And I know if you're writers and you're in this group, you know exactly what I'm talking about, which is when you feel trust and you feel safe and you feel valued, and you're not going to get evaluated and you're not going to get graded and you're not going to get shamed, you will go wild. And when you go wild, the writing is powerful. So I wanted to tell you that that's why in the book, all of these pieces are so, they're just gorgeous writing. And it's because they felt safe enough to go wherever they went. So
Okay,
that's
let me
sure.
just, can I just interrupt you for 1 second, Nancy?
Yeah,
Which I
I'm
know
done
you
anyway.
will. But what I want to say is that you just did, I suspect, exactly what you do in the book. You just gave us a verbal personal essay, sort of with all 7 of your ideas, all in this. There it is. You
It's
totally nailed
over. We
it
can
out
say
for us.
goodnight now. Goodbye.
All those highlights. I mean, you gave us the dramatic moment, you gave us the vulnerability and the honesty, and you gave us the involvement and the suspense in what you were going to say, and there were stakes and all. It was like a master class in watching you actually verbally do what you tell people in writing to do.
Oh, you're unbelievable.
So isn't that right, everybody? So now we get it, right? Just do what Nancy just did, right? But do it on paper.
That exactly. And it, that's the other thing. It's, when people are stuck or they have trouble writing, then I kind of say, when you call your best friend on the phone and you say, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe it. I was sitting on the corner of Mountain Road and Albany Avenue, and I was sobbing all night, and I didn't take my eye makeup off, and I'm listening to, I got James Taylor Cranked, and I look and he is sitting, the creep, in the car next to me wearing the sheepskin jacket I bought him. Oh my God, I cannot believe it. I am waiting for the light to change." Okay, now you're going to write the piece. And you suddenly say, "Having sat in my automobile at the intersection of Mountain Road. What happened to you? Why didn't you sound animated and passionate and excited? Don't forget, you are a storyteller. We're all born storytellers. Somebody took your voice away. Grab that voice back and sound like you and have that same awe and that same passion and that same excited. So, what I say is pretend that you're telling somebody something. If writing is intimidating and you think you can't do that. So anyway, that's the story. My husband is unbelievable. He just brought me a little nosh and a little water.
So pretend, so somebody got your storyteller. I think, Nancy, that is such a really powerful thing to say. I remember years ago, I was a psychotherapist. It was before I'd really committed to my writing life. And I was in a psychodrama workshop, and we were given an opportunity to just tell stories about, just tell a story about when we were a kid. And I was so frozen in that moment. All my friends were telling these really delightful, because we were acting out these stories, and they were everybody else in the group. And I was like, I didn't know how to tell a story about myself as the protagonist.
Wow.
And it was that moment of awakening where I realized, okay, everything shifts from here because I'm going to figure this out. And
Okay.
I want to ask about your own identity as a storyteller. Did you always identify as a storyteller? Who listened, nurtured, or nourished your storytelling ability? Is it just completely natural? I'm curious about how and when you became a storyteller.
Well, I think in our family, they made a lot of mistakes, but one of the good things they did was they really listened. And I knew that I clamored for attention, and I knew the way I was going to get them to listen was, I mean, I didn't know that intellectually, but I could see you. I think a lot of people know the first time they made their parents laugh. And once you have that success, it's like, oops, I'm doing this from now on. It's such an amazing, powerful feeling of I can make grown-ups crack up. So I think I was pretty young, and I was tall young. And I think that was also a gift. I hated it because I was teased unmercifully, but because I was different and couldn't fit in, and I think a lot of us writers were fringe people, we were all on the margin. You have that, no, I don't fit in, and so how am I going to fit in? I have to, and also you have the sensitivity to go with it. Then I just started to realize that the way I was going to fit in was by honoring my differences and not trying to be like everybody else. So being that tall, plus I got this unearned respect. It's the strangest thing, but being tall, people were, "Oh, sweetheart, can you just get that thing off the top shelf for me?" So I had grown-ups acting like I was something. And I took that in, even though inside of me, I was still faking it. Fake it till you make it. You want me to read something, don't you? And I did choose some things. So
Yes, you did. You worked hard to prepare on this, so we want you to read.
okay. I'm amazed that y'all want to be read to, but here we go. So, this is actually from Memoirs Medicine, but the rest of them I'll read from the new book.
Okay.
Um, well, I better preface this. So my son Dan, oh boy, I got to get my tissue because I know I'm going to cry. My son Dan got diagnosed with diabetes at 9 months old. He was the youngest diabetic in medical history at the time. And then at 22, he got MS. And he was angry his whole life. We did everything wrong you could possibly do with a chronically ill child. We should have had a shrink move in with us. We should never have opened our mouths. I mean, that's the book I should write, is what to do with a chronically ill child. Because we were like, oh, poor Dan, what is he going to do? How are you ever going to, oh, well, everybody has 3 outs in baseball, but you're 6, so you're going to have 4 outs. We just ruined his, and you also, the other thing is, you can't give self-esteem to somebody. They have to earn it. So I did everything wrong I could possibly have done. And he was a little shit, angry all the time. We allowed to swear? Yes. But gorgeous and funny. And, and he was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And by the way, just so you know, before I he did die 12 years ago, but he died at 38, and he crowded in more girlfriends and more life and more joy in the end. He really surrendered and became beautiful. But this is sort of in the middle, not the beginning, but the middle. My trip to Rhode Island. Dan has a crush on a hairstylist at Supercuts in Narragansett, Rhode Island. Our cousin Bert, who lives in Newport, has invited us to come see him a million times. Dan agrees when I suggest we combine the visit with a haircut. I have been doing push-ups so I can lift the manual wheelchair onto the bike rack on our old Volvo station wagon by myself. It gives me independence for my travels with Dan. I can just take off when Dan says, let's go. On the ferry to the mainland, we pass the time by listing the jobs we've held. He says dishwasher at the Yellow Barn in Avon. I say waitress at the Stevensville Hotel in the Catskills. He says sous chef at Frank's Steakhouse in Hartford. I say go-go dancer at the World's Fair. He says nude model at Simsbury Art League. I say, what? You were a nude model? He says, yeah. I say, well, it happened, so was I. Does that mean we cancel that one out? He says, no, it double counts. We continue. I say drama coach in my living room for little kids. He says assistant drama coach in our living room for little kids. And then we reminisce about that disaster. He was 13 and I wanted to give him some responsibility and a chance to feel good about himself. But there was one kid we both almost killed. The child repeated everything anyone said and we couldn't stop him. When I told his mother I'd refund her money, she begged me to let him stay. It must have been her only 2 hours of peace. We keep going with our job lists until I say, for your age, you've racked up a lot of work hours. Either you've been a really hard worker or you couldn't hold down a job. We laugh, both knowing it is the latter. Once we hit the open road, we blast WHJY 94.1 Providence on the radio. We sing at the top of our lungs. Take it easy, take it easy. Don't let the sound of your own wheels make you crazy. The Eagles have no idea what they're doing for me this fine morning. I asked Dan what he likes about the girl in the salon. He says she's smarter than me and funnier. He doesn't say anything about her look, which makes me happy. Maybe he's growing up. We enter Rhode Island and Dan says, I have to go to the bathroom. Can you wait? I ask. We'll be at the salon in 10 minutes. No, I have to go now. He is squirming and making sounds of desperation as I take the first left I see. It's a narrow dirt road into a cemetery. I put the car in park, jump out, open his door, and literally pull him out. I lean him against the car. I unzip his pants and don't even hesitate. I take his penis out. And since I have not done this before, I don't take it out far enough, and he pees all over his pants and me. When I get him back into the car, the mood has downshifted. Not only are we both embarrassed, but now he can't see Tiffany. We arrive at Bert's. He gives Dan dry clothes, but Bert is much shorter, so my 6'2" son looks like Lurch with attitude. The trip is ruined. I can't fix this one. We sleep over, and I suggest we stop to see Tiffany on the way home. What would she want with a cripple like me, he says. Vintage Dan. We return to the ferry terminal to the vineyard with the radio silent the whole way. So I probably should have prefaced it by saying, he couldn't really use his hands anymore because they tremored. So that's, I like that story. I mean, I don't like what happened, but I like that I wrote it. And by the way, I think one of the most important things is to get your sorrow out of your body, because I think it marinates in your liver and in your kidneys and in your heart. And so write the hard stuff, even if you aren't writing it for publication. It's very healing to get this stuff out. Otherwise, you're carrying it, and it's in your body. And when I tell people that, sometimes I look at their faces and I go, oh, you're worried that all the shit's going to come out and you won't have any more? Don't worry, more garbage is coming. So never worry. Anyway, you want me to read more? I have more.
Yes, I do. But I do want you to read more, but let me go ahead and ask you a question right here, about what you just read to us. So do you do this instinctively? I think I'm asking this for our readers who might get your book and say, okay, I'm going to get that irresistible hook and I'm going to get those direct quotes and I'm the drama and the vulnerability. Are you doing this instinctively when you sit down to write? I noticed you also read I think it's a weekly or a monthly column, probably for Martha's Vineyard Times, maybe, or
Every other week.
the Gazette. Is it every
The Times, you're right, the Times,
time?
it's
Okay.
every other week.
And are you doing this at this point instinctively when you sit down to write? And if you are doing it instinctively now, how do you think you got into that place? And how does the book help the reader figure out how to be doing this
Well,
more?
I think the prompts are great because one of the things that's really hard for people is it's so overwhelming. If you think you're going to sit down and write a memoir or even a piece, where do I start? So the prompts are like containers. They just they keep it small and you can't not write them because they're so specific. They're so, when in the workshop, when I give a prompt, I watch. Nobody sits there going, what should I write? Because they're so specific. So at the end of every chapter, there is a prompt. And I think that's one of the things. But, everybody's got a different talent. Some people make outlines. Some people let the thing mull over for days. Um, I, I can write very fast and very easily, and I'm very easy on myself. I have to say that there are people that are terrible, terrible critics to their own writing. I finish something and go, "Oh my God, look how brilliant I am." No, I'm not that bad, but I'm not hard on myself. I'm so happy to be doing it. It's so satisfying, and I also have no boundaries, and so it's very easy for me to write um, stuff that a lot of people. I wrote a piece about being poor. Not I didn't write a piece about being poor. I wrote a piece that was in my column about washing an expensive saucepan and how the stuff comes off so easily. But if you spend $100 on a saucepan, it's not going to crust over and be ruined. But I grew up with a saucepan that my parents would take a hammer and bang out the bottom and try to make it flat, and everything was stuck to it. And I basically talked about growing up poor. And I have a friend she's very wealthy, and she read the piece and she called me on the phone and she said, the piece is just so amazing, but you're gonna be blown away when you hear what she said to me. Aren't you ashamed of being poor? I said, I didn't do it. I said, no, I'm not ashamed. I said, it shaped me. And I have incredible compassion for people that don't have money. And also I have compassion for my poor parents who worked their buns off and they just weren't earners. They didn't come into it. They didn't have it easily. But I she said I would never be able to admit that. She said I could never have let people know. And that, of course, tells me more about her than me. But again, the piece I'm going to read you next will tell you I have no boundaries. I have to find it though. Wait. Did you have another question?
I probably do have more questions, but I want you to read because we got about 10 more minutes left before we're going to go to the open mic. So you just go to the things that you feel like, okay, I really want to get this done.
Okay. What happened to my book? Oh, here it is. Okay. Oh, now this one, when I was putting this book together, my editor um, said, "What about that piece you sent me a long time ago about your marriage?" And I went, "What piece?" And she sent it to me, and I was like, "I wrote that? I didn't even remember that I wrote it." And I started reading it, and I thought it was good. And now that it's in the book, it's a little embarrassing, but not embarrassing enough for me to not share it.
Okay.
Okay. At the height of the women's movement and at the very beginning of our pot smoking days, we were invited to a party with people we mostly didn't know. My infant son, Dan, had just been diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, and I was tired, dark circles under my eyes, and an extra 30 pounds on my hips. And if you cared to look closely, you could see in my face that I had a baby who wished he had a different mother. one who wasn't sticking needles into his teeny thighs and then a split second later trying to comfort him. I think I tried on about 9 outfits before I finally settled on something that I thought could hide my metaphorical weight as well as the actual poundage. We were barely over the threshold when a sexy young blonde ran up to Joel, grabbed his hand, and pulled him onto the dance floor. He didn't resist. You know how there are certain types of women you are so not, but wish you were? She was mine. She had that dancer's body with her feet pointed out in that ballet dancer walk, which I have tried to imitate to no avail. Her hair was what I was paying top dollar with blow dryers and big rollers to emulate. She was about 5'2", and since that was my height at birth, that cute diminutive look had been in my rearview mirror for decades. I must have been invisible because they both went off as if I weren't even there. I watched them dance and thought, of course he'll leave me for her. I am fat, I am ugly, and I'm not even a good mother. I can't make my baby stop crying. I broke his pancreas because I smoked pot. I'm irresponsible, unreliable, and undependable. And if my baby dies, it will be my punishment for being a bad mother. The loop began again. I'm unattractive, obese, and no fun. I made my way to the food table. There was a big cooked ham in the center. I remember removing the clove, then the maraschino cherry, and then the pineapple ring from the top of the whole ham, and glaring at Joel, who must have felt the laser-focused dagger energy. I sliced off a square of fat and said in my head, "You think I'm fat now? Wait, asshole, I'll show you fat." I ate as if I were about to run a marathon, carved up, chowed down. I was down the rabbit hole of self-defeating thoughts, and until later, I remained at the bottom, with Joel nowhere to be found, not that I was actively looking. When he did emerge, rumpled and contrite, I glared at him, and out we walked. I put on a fake smile for the hostess, who I was sure couldn't wait to call her girlfriends and say, "You know that Nancy Aronie? She looks like a cow and her husband's fooling around. And who is still wearing midi skirts?" At this point in my head, I had pretty much gotten divorced and was an obese single mom with 2 kids, one of whom was sick and no income. The minute we got into the car and before Joel put the key in the ignition, I started pummeling him. I had never hit anyone in my life. I was so out of control, I actually missed and banged my wrist on the headrest. He deflected my blows, protesting all the while, "Nothing happened. Jesus, Nance, nothing happened." I said, "I don't care if nothing happened. I don't care if you two solved the fucking unified field theory while nothing happened." I did not need to be sitting there humiliated with people I don't even know. We drove home in silence. We pulled into the driveway and sat there. My mother was sleeping over, so we didn't have to rush a babysitter home. Finally, I said, "If you want to fuck around, go fuck around, but don't ever, ever do that to me again." "I didn't do anything," he protested. "It's just that there's this huge party going on, and I can't go because society—" "Oh, please, society," I snapped. "Women are crawling all over the place, and I am not allowed to even—" "Oh, poor Joel," I whined. "He's married to a loser, and now he's stuck and can't have any fun. It must be just so horrible for you." "It's not horrible," he said, "but you don't look at other guys sometimes?" "No," I barked. "I don't look at other guys anytime. It took me most of my life to find the one I wanted, through sickness and through health, in case you had forgotten." He took that in and countered with, "Everyone is fucking around, and you want to stay home and sit on the couch watching Mission Impossible?" "Yes, as a matter of fact, that's exactly what I want to do," I screamed. "I feel like I'm missing something revolutionary culturally, and I'm on the outside looking in. Why can't we just experiment and see how it goes?" "See how it goes?" I screamed louder. "See how it goes? I'll tell you how it's going to go. Some little blonde dancer just like the one tonight, who doesn't walk around exhausted with dark circles under her eyes with bad breath because there's no time to gargle with Listerine, who hasn't neglected to change her bra in 3 weeks because her boobs hurt too much, is going to walk into your life, and she's going to smell good and laugh at all your stupid jokes and dance and be thin and have perfect hair, and you're going to waltz right out of here. And I wouldn't exactly blame you either. If I could leave me, I'd leave me too. My husband has always been slower in fights than me. He is not quick with an angry quip. He's not even slow with an angry quip. He doesn't have a sarcastic or angry bone in his body, and he's not mean. And at this point, he was just young. Not chronologically, but emotionally. And the timing of the women's movement couldn't have been worse for my marriage. We were both exhausted. We were constantly worried about money. Our sex life, which had never been Marlon Brando and Eva Marie Saint, had devolved to maybe tomorrow I'll have feeling in my body again, honey. He looked shocked and hurt. Nancy said, "What are you talking about? I'm not looking for a wife. I'm not looking to go anywhere. I just want to have what everyone else is having right now, a little extracurricular activity." He forgot to say, "You're not fat, you're beautiful, and I already have the best wife in the world." Instead, he said, "Can we keep discussing this?" My mother found us sitting at the kitchen table, still talking at daybreak. It was Sunday. The last thing we said to each other was, no matter what we decide, we must remember to be kind and careful with each other. I was punch drunk from no sleep and a broken heart when the phone rang later that day. It was my former student who had been our marijuana connection. "I'm going to London tomorrow," she said. "Your new dealer's name is Bob. I gave him your phone number." The next morning, just after I put the kids down for their nap, the phone did indeed ring. Weary and semi-conscious, I said a half-hearted hello, and something in the way he sounded woke me up from a long winter's asexual nap. I'll never know if it was that I was so wounded from the harsh rejection of the night before, or whether he really had an unusually sexy voice. But for some reason, before he arrived for what he called our business meeting, I applied my coal black eyeliner more mindfully than usual and put on a t-shirt that had my nipples singing, "There's no business like show business." I didn't yet know a phrase like "the universe sent him to me," but if I had, that's what I would have been thinking. However, there was no thinking. There was only feeling. I had never felt before. I was vibrating. My body was shaking, and I knew only one thing: I had to be with this man. Within 20 minutes, we were in the attic on the mattress Joel had thrown up there in case we ever had guests who were too tired to drive home. There was no more weariness that morning, but there was definitely a driving home. When Bob left, I tried to process what had happened. I sat and stared at the leaded glass eyebrow windows that were letting in the pink morning light. I waited for my heart to stop pounding. I floated around for the rest of the day, probably more loving to the world than I had ever been. Couldn't stop smiling or looking at myself in the mirror. And when Joel walked in from work, I didn't skip a beat before I blurted, "So I did it with the drug guy today." He smiled and said, "So how was that?" I said it was fine. My breathing had just returned to normal, so I sounded normal. "So now do you see what I mean?" he said. I thought he was going to say, "Where is he? I'll beat the crap out of him." In fact, that's what I'd wanted. And then we could go back to being us, imperfect, but us. Not only would beating the crap out of someone be completely not Joel's nature, but that is not at all how he felt. He was triumphant, like he had gotten his point across. And me, well, I was devastated. I thought the definition of love was ownership, possession, jealousy, so he must not really love me. It turned out Bob was the perfect antidote to my wounded heart. I saw the wounded poet. A poster of James Dean had hung on my teenage bedroom wall, and now here was his doppelganger right in my actual house. He was 24, I was 32. He was a born lover. I was new at anything to do with my body, and he had everything to do with it. But now I had to justify my change of heart about opening up the marriage. My rationale was that we had practically been virgins when we got married. No one could have premarital sex. Abortion was illegal, and the birds and the bees lecture I had gotten at home was, "Your only currency is your reputation. If it's soiled, no one will want you. No one decent, anyway." So Joel was right. We had been missing a party. But I was right, too. It was scary as anything. We sat down and wrote a list of sensible rules. Always tell the truth. No betrayal, no deceptions. No married people. No people in our social circle. No playing tennis or having blueberry pancakes with him in the morning. No one sleeps in our bed. I don't think we stuck to that one. And so we got to have a high school redo where instead of being terrified and insecure about our raging hormones, we were 32-year-old teenagers, still raging, but with a bit of grown-up consciousness. Now you know everything.
Oh my goodness, Nancy, I just have to tell you, I just think that thank you for reading it to us. It really makes a difference because I can imagine, reading that story and enjoying it, thinking it was really, really interesting and compelling and really enjoying it. But I have to say, to see your face, your body, your authority, your presence. I mean, we are so, I think, I know I am, and I suspect a number of other people in this room tonight, we are so hungering for honesty and vulnerability, authenticity in people's voices. You gave us this tonight.
We had we're having our 58th anniversary this August. And we did make it through. And it was the honesty, actually, and the best friend thing that we did have, which was really cool. So if it's open mic time, we'll go there and
Oh my gosh, Nancy. Well, I know that I think we really all could sit here and listen to you all night, but that's not our bargain. We got a contract and we want to keep it and we want to hear these other voices. But I have to say, thank you so much. Thank you. You picked the perfect things to read. And
I'm naked in front of all these people that I've never met before. But I actually put clothes on for the reading. So.
okay, but now it's the reader's time to get vulnerable, right? And so I'm going to actually pause and stop the recording. And I think, and you also should have a chance, Nancy, to take a look at the chat room
Okay.
and maybe catch up on anything